8 days later, the USS Davenport slowed into orbit over the planet Chelsea 3. The green Class L planet had been charted decades ago and classified as of little interest. With an atmosphere of 83% nitrogen, 10% argon, and only 4% oxygen, it was determined at the time to not be worth the trouble of setting up a colony for human habitation. However, with the recent admission of the Gunther, a race that thrived in high nitrogen atmosphere, Chelsea 3 looked like a promising planet for them. With the last planetary scans having been conducted 50 years ago, the Gunther asked the Federation for updated information about Chelsea 3, with specifications geared more for colonization than the original studies had done. With a desire to impress a new member world as to their importance in the great galactic society, Starfleet had sent the Davenport out the day after the request was made. Captain Harry Q. Davis stifled a yawn as he studied the slowly rotating planet below his ship. His science crew had already been given their orders and were busily conducting their scans and collecting information. All in all, Davis often wondered why Starfleet didn't develop a remote ship for these simple duties. He well understood the limitations of Class 9 probes, but something the size of a runabout would have plenty of room for scanners, communication, and enough computer core space to do what was needed. Why tie up starships and personnel for something this safe and mundane? It was a shame he didn't know someone at the higher echelons to make such a proposal. If he knew the right people, they might even name the class after him. Davis hated these milk-run missions, although this time they did have a mystery on their hands. It was the only thing that had provided any interest during the whole trip, other than an occasional computer glitch that had been showing up. Although annoying at times, he had been assured there was nothing to worry about. However, a little over 6 hours ago, an empty and unregistered runabout had drifted across their flight path. The empty ship was Starfleet, but his ship's records found no registration or base for it, nor was there anything on board that indicated where it had come from. They had sent a communique to Starbase 43, but had yet to get a response. It was simply not usual to find a Starfleet vessel floating about space, with no one aboard nor any clue as to where it had come from. The comm beeped at his arm, bringing his thoughts back to the present. Davis here. Captain, this is Pearson. We're showing some fluctuations on the antimatter containment field. Cause is unknown, but it doesn't look good. Davis sat up at the news. What kind of fluctuations? Is there a risk of containment failure? Several computer alarms sounded over the open comm channel, as well as on the bridge, as the ship's computer automatically went to yellow alert as information was relayed from the engineering monitors to the central core. I'm afraid it looks that way, sir. So far we have no clue on what's going on. Circuits just seem to be shutting down faster than we can reroute. If we can't lock this down, we've got under 4 minutes for a core breach. Davis turned in his seat to the ops station to his right. Lieutenant Roberts, open ship-wide communications. With a responding nod, Davis spoke. All crew, core breach is possible. All crew to evac stations, prepare to abandon ship. Without even hearing the actual sounds, Davis knew what was now happening with the crew. The officers would maintain their professionalism, but among the 249 individuals on board, roughly a third included crew member families. As well as the officers would assure them of safety, the civilians would begin to panic, especially the few children present. Sir, Pearson called again. All attempts to maintain containment have failed. Systems have simply shut down. We even tried to replace some of the isolinear chips within the failed circuit. It's still nothing. It's like something has taken over the computer system and has shut systems down. Containment failure in 2 minutes. If there's nothing left to try, get your crew and evac. Davis stood up, staring at the green planet below. Not a good place to send his people, but they could at least survive there until rescued. Computer, signal abandoned ship to all crew. Roberts,
ship.
send an emergency communication to Starbase 43.
Abandoned
Tell
ship.
them we are predicting a warp core breach and abandoning ship.
Abandoned
Then
ship.
get to the lifeboats. The comm beeped again. Davis answered to get the nervous voice of a crewman with several crying children in the background. Captain, This is Ensign Lance at the aft lifeboat array. None of the lifeboats will open. What was that? He asked, unsure of what he had heard, or thought he had heard. All the doors are locked. They're failing to open. Manual override does not function. Sir, Roberts called. Similar reports from the port side and from the shuttle bay. Nothing is working. What is this? Davis almost demanded. Lifeboats have their own power supply and controls. How can they be locked? Unknown, sir. Computer indicates nothing wrong, but all life pod doors are locked shut and refuse to open. Computer, Davis commanded, why are lifeboats locked? Because you all deserve to die, came the female voice in a maniacal tone. All of you will die! Die! What the devil? Davis questioned, a bit of fear and anger in his voice. Computer, state cause of malfunction. All systems report normal operation, the computer replied back in its monotone voice. Davis was unsure which was more settling, the sudden crazed outburst by the computer or the sudden return to normality. Captain, containment field has stopped deteriorating. Breach is no longer imminent. Davis whirled to Roberts and nearly sprinted over to the station. Are you certain? Did systems kick in? Something happened, sir, Roberts replied with a relieved smile. Containment field at 35% and rising slowly. Perhaps Pearson. Captain to Pearson. Did you manage a miracle down there? Sir, came her voice. We are just outside the port lifeboats and have been trying to get them online. No one is in engineering. Then how? Davis asked as another alarm went off. Sir, Ensign Simon from the helm station called out with a tone of disbelief. The navigational thrusters have fired full power. Our orbit has shifted. We are losing altitude. Contact with the atmosphere in 2 minutes 20. Davis' head ached. He could feel his blood pressure rising. What the hell was going on with his ship? Can you correct? No, sir. Circuits have shut down. I am getting no response from thrusters, impulse, or warp drive. Pearson, any luck with those lifeboats? Negative, sir, came a reply tinged with fear and panic. Nothing is working. Davis stood tall, the green and yellow clouds of the planet getting closer. Suggestions? The bridge officers checked all their computer terminals, but the only reply was the shaking of their heads. The view screen began to show a dull red glow as the ship shuddered. Davis felt completely helpless. He felt the same feeling of failure they had when he went through the Kobayashi scenario at the Academy. I don't understand any of this. Ominous laughter suddenly filled the doomed ship as Davenport entered the atmosphere. As the starship began to overheat, a small Federation runabout launched itself in an upward course and flew on to deep space, leaving behind the Davenport as it blazed through the atmosphere like a comet of death. 6 days after the destruction of the Davenport, a tumbling piece of nickel-iron rock plied through space. It was continuing its journey through the dark cold toward the planet Farron 3. The 30-kilometer asteroid was a resident of the star system in which it now traveled, but that had been 6 billion years ago, during the formation of the system. The asteroid had been moved in time, but not space, and so continued its ancient path toward what was now in the present, a fully formed, inhabitable planet. Aaron Nightowl blinked his eyes for the 3rd time, hoping that the object he stared at would vanish as quickly as it had appeared. For all of his 65 years as astronomer in Gasik Province, he had never encountered a phenomenon like this, nor could he understand how every other astronomer on the planet could have missed this until now. Even the ancient astronomers should have been able to detect an object this size, but there was no record anywhere, past or present. Seemingly out of nowhere, an asteroid the size of an island had appeared in the night sky. There was no doubt that the massive object had not been there until just hours ago, much less headed directly for the planet. Already it was close enough to be seen with the naked eye, a bright light in the dark sky, getting larger with each second. Nightowl quickly ran the calculations through his head and decided against making television communications, with government officials to inform them of his latest estimate of impact, or where the asteroid would hit. It truly didn't matter, and updating the public wouldn't help. Those in the public who, for one reason or another, did not already know about the oncoming danger would before long. And that was pretty much all anyone could say about their life expectancy. It would all be over before long. Public awareness would run rampant as soon as they simply looked up. Panic on a global scale would follow. Not for the first time, Nido was glad that the astronomic tower was so remote. Hysteria would not reach him here. Not that such would last very long anyway. Night Owl could easily imagine the worldwide reactions as populations learned of their fate. First, anger. Why had the government not told them of this? Why had they not done something to stop the inevitable impact? Not that there would be any answer, and truthfully, even had the governments known, there would have been nothing they could have done anyway. An asteroid this size could not have been deflected with their technology, nor was there anything the world government could do upon impact. There would be no survivors. As the minutes passed, the white glow in the sky increased in size and brightness. By now, the population would have realized exactly how short their life expectancy was. They would lose their anger, and the hand of fear would seize them. Even from his distant location, he could almost hear the cries and shouts to the heavens for some miracle. A world population feeling fear and impending death was almost palatable. Just as the sky ignited the asteroid into a blazing god of death, seconds from his own death, Nido swore he heard laughter. Coran 4 was an Earth-like planet, and had been a Federation world for nearly a century, and, like most Federation worlds, it was peaceful in the extreme. Today was only slightly different, as the planetary leaders were meeting in the capital about an irrigation project planned for one of the northern provinces. The project elicited a good deal of controversy, since the river that needed to be diverted to water a huge area of cropland was also home to a small, seemingly insignificant but endangered fish. Agriculturists and the public argued for the need, as the newly irrigated croplands would provide thousands of people with more food. Conservationists and a few of the public argued for the importance of saving a species from extinction, even one as small as the red-finned skimmer. Chancellor Patali strode up to the council's podium to speak to the gathered representatives. Patali was well known for his commanding voice and convincing arguments. The opposition to the river project had done their best to sway the powerful politician to their side, but with little success. He and those of the northern province just could not see the overriding importance of one small fish over the well-being of the people. Most of them had not even heard of the fish, much less seen one. Whether it was there or not would mean little to their stomachs come fall if food production stayed as it was. Patali cleared his throat before he spoke, commanding everyone's attention. My friends and colleagues, you know why we are here this day. Despite my usual oratory, I will speak few words today. This debate is simple. Divert a river and feed thousands of people, or let the river stand to save a fish few even know about. I must ask you, my friends, what is more important, the lives of people or some unknown fish that may become extinct? In what seemed a response, a dense white cloud appeared directly behind Patali. The group of nearly 200 gathered people gasped and pointed, causing Patali to end his speech and turn behind him. For a moment he wondered if it was some trick by the opposition, a smoke bomb of some sort. Then he saw movement in the white haze, causing him to back up slightly. Before anyone had time to act, a large reptilian head swung forward as the cloud dispersed. The head was attached to a 4-meter-tall biped with an equally long tail. Patali could only stare at the monstrosity before him. He immediately recognized it from his childhood visits to the Museum of History, but his mind refused to believe its existence. That changed within seconds as the head shot forward and snapped his upper body in its jaws. As the screams of fear filled the air, Vitali could see another of the creatures moving off to the side towards the panicked crowd. Vitali's last thoughts was how a long-extinct species could suddenly come to life. As the darkness came, he heard in his mind that perhaps an extinct species did matter after all. Captain's Log, Stardate 8609.5. The Swift Eagle has been on patrol for 72 hours now, investigating reports of disturbances in the coin aisle system. So far, we have encountered nothing out of the ordinary. If nothing occurs in the next 12 hours, we will return to our normal duty patrol. Captain Chris Reagan slowly rose from his command chair to walk over to the science station and looked over the shoulder of a science officer, Lieutenant Commander Tarl. Although he had worked with the Marine officer for more than 2 years now, he was always fascinated by how adept she was at her station. The light blue hands, on 4 arms, danced over the console as though she were playing some type of musical instrument. Tara looked up at the captain with her dark purple eyes, a slight frown on her face. Sensors still show nothing in the area, sir. I think this is just another one of Captain Tegan's visions. Reagan nodded slightly. I agree that Tegan is not the most reliable source of information, but we have to check out every incident. With that incident on Koran 4, Admiral Benson wants everything checked. After all, having a 6 million year old prehistoric reptile suddenly appear inside a planet's capitol building and eat 7 major politicians is nothing to shrug off. She turned back to the console. Yes, sir. Tarl did not remind the captain about the last incident that Captain Tegan reported. He had opened fire with a phaser pistol in a starbase lounge, swearing that there were giant insects invading the base. He ignored the fact that only he saw the insects, and that the bottle of Nigerian whiskey he had consumed had nothing to do with the event. Such is why, she thought, only synthol should be served aboard starbases. Reagan took a last look at the science readouts before moving to the engineering console. This was definitely one mission that he had just as soon not have to carry out. The Tyronian sector of space was boring enough without having to sit in space and wait for some supposed event that was reported by a captain that most often drank more than he ate. The starship captain was just preparing to look over the lieutenant's shoulder when the bridge sensor alarm sounded. What the hell? He exclaimed as he quickly moved down from his chair. Reagan stared at the view screen, which displayed a semi-transparent white fog that had suddenly appeared several thousand meters off the port bow. Tarl made a quick scan. It's some kind of temporal rift, sir. There was no warning to its appearance. Sir, I'm picking up something else. Something is coming through that rift, a vessel of some type. Increase magnification and go to yellow alert, he commanded rapidly. The fog expanded slightly, sending gaseous tendrils outward, as though it were a life form gasping and growing. Then a bright light aura formed briefly as a ship sailed out of the rift and into dark space. The white fog that had been its origin slowly faded into non-existence. The new ship was easily twice the size of the Nebula-class starship. However, based on its appearance, it was far from being as advanced. The hull was a patchwork of various sized pieces of armor plating that made a Packlet ship look pristine. I do not recognize that design of a ship, but it's huge, Tactical Officer Ogami said out loud. I detect no shields, and her power is simple fusion drive. No warp capability. Sensors detect that it is powering up some type of... He looked at the readout again. Lasers. The ship contains over 400 life forms, all over 4 meters in height. Raise shields and go to red alert, Reagan ordered, as he watched the ship come nearer. Try to hail them. Communications Officer Barry Phillips attempted to follow out the orders. No response, sir. True that there was no reply to the communications channel, but the alien ship did respond by firing its lasers. The fire-red coherent light struck the shields, barely rocking the ship. Deflectors absorbed laser energy equal to 58 gigawatts of energy. No damage to the shields. Reagan made a nod. Mr. Ogami, Bring phasers and torpedoes to power. Target their engine area only and prepare to fire on my command. Helm change course to 320 Mark 12. The Sharp ship pivoted away from the oncoming vessel as again it fired its lasers. The beam struck over the saucer section of the ship, causing the shields to flare up in bright red. "Captain," Ogami called again, "shields have dropped by 0.5%. I am now detecting a new energy source from the alien ship. It looks like they are preparing to launch." He paused, rechecked scans, and then spoke with an incredulous tone. "Chemical propulsion missiles with nuclear warheads." "Very well," Reagan responded. "Fire phasers on its engines. Disable her." Lieutenant Ogami directed the ship's energy to the aft end of the attacking vessel. Having no deflectors, the phased energy burned through the metal layers of the ship to exit out the opposite end. The large ship continued forward on its own momentum, but began to pivot as maneuvering jets were fired. "How badly is it damaged, Ogami?" Reagan asked as he watched the giant ship drift. "Fusion drive is out. Minimal life support. She appears to be trying to move in an attack position using chemical thrusters. Sensors are showing some odd energy readings coming from certain areas of their vessel. I cannot tell if they're trying to restore power or to manually launch their missiles." Reagan stood up. "Lieutenant Blackhawk, full impulse away from that ship." The Cherokee navigator instantly moved the Swift Eagle hard to port and away from the damaged ship. It reached a distance of 3,000 kilometers when the mystery vessel exploded in a nuclear fireball. The radioactive fire did not spread out for long, as the white fog appeared once again and carried away all that was left of the destroyed ship. "What just happened?" Captain Reagan asked, to no one in particular. Tara was still studying her sensor readout. The time rift reappeared and engulfed the explosion. There are no signs of the ship or any radiation from the explosion. She looked up at the captain. "It's as though what happened never did." "What kind of ship was that?" Reagan turned to his navigator. "One that couldn't possibly have been here." "You recognize it, sir?" Ogami asked. He nodded slowly. "Yes, I remember seeing a picture of it in my history class at the academy. That was a Sarzarian cruiser." Everyone on the bridge wore a puzzled look, except for Ogami. "I remember something about them. They were a very exponentialistic empire, far more savage than even the Klingons were. But if I remember correctly, they died out some 12,000 years ago." The captain nodded. "They died from a bacterial plague that they originally created to use on one of their enemies." He turned to his tactical officer. "And yes, they became extinct a little over 12,000 years ago. Yet your sensor readings match the records and describe a Salazarian. And that ship was not a figment of our imagination." He sat down in his command chair. "Lieutenant Phillips, give me Admiral Benson." It seems that Captain Tegan was right about his visions this time.